The air in Washington, D.C. that late autumn day was thick with tension, not just the coming winter chill. The city was holding its breath, facing a crisis of governance at its peak. President Donald Trump, known for upending norms, was preparing to leave the Capitol. Not for a routine trip, but as multiple disasters converged. The White House lights flickered against a backdrop of national uncertainty, symbolizing leadership in flux. As the presidential motorcade readied, news alerts painted a grim picture. Wildfires ravaged California, and a federal shutdown was grinding essential services to a halt. Agencies meant to protect Americans were paralyzed. Instead of reassurance, the nation saw a president on the move, leaving a vacuum of power. The departure was urgent and defiant, but for many, it was jarring. Trump left as D.C. was embroiled in a bitter power struggle. Federal workers furloughed, and smoke billowed on the West Coast. The optics were stark, a leader disengaging as the nation's foundation shook. This act became a symbol of a presidency defined by disruption. It wasn't just about travel, it was about the message sent to a nation in chaos. The stage was set for cascading failures, with consequences measured in lost homes, compromised safety, and eroding public trust. Just weeks before, Washington, D.C. had been transformed into a federalized zone. President Trump, citing rising crime, issued an emergency order. The city's police force was federalized, and 2,000 National Guard members deployed. For 30 days, law enforcement reported directly to the White House, bypassing local leaders. The move, meant as a show of strength, created confusion and resentment among residents. Mayor Muriel Bowser's authority was undermined, and D.C.'s long fight for autonomy was set back. When the order expired, Congress refused to extend it, but the battle shifted to Capitol Hill. 13 bills were introduced to permanently curtail D.C.'s autonomy, including giving the president power over the city's attorney general. The conflict evolved from emergency measure to legislative war. Trump's departure left a city in political limbo, its future uncertain. Allies claimed constitutional authority, but most residents saw a blatant power grab. The struggle over D.C.'s governance became a national flashpoint. The president's exit underscored the unresolved fight for the city's freedom. As D.C. battled for control, a broader crisis gripped the nation. In October, the federal government shut down after Congress and the White House failed to agree on a budget. Thousands of federal employees were furloughed, their work left undone. The shutdown paralyzed institutions meant to serve and protect Americans. At the worst possible time, FEMA's administrative and financial arms were crippled, freezing disaster recovery funds and technical assistance. States recovering from past disasters lost their federal lifelines. The National Weather Service and U.S. Forest Service were forced to furlough staff, weakening disaster prevention and response. National parks were left with minimal coverage. Mayors and governors scrambled, unsure if federal help would ever arrive. The shutdown exposed the government's inability to perform its most basic functions, turning political crisis into national emergency. On the West Coast, the shutdown's impact was immediate and dire. California, already battling drought, faced new wildfires, this time largely without federal support. Governor Gavin Newsom warned the shutdown was making communities less safe. Federal agencies, especially the U.S. Forest Service and FEMA, were sidelined, delaying recovery grants and reducing firefighting resources. California's investments in wildfire prevention, over $5 billion, and nearly 2,000 new Cal Fire positions, became its main defense. Emergency projects were fast-tracked, but the absence of federal partnership was deeply felt. State responders were stretched thin, forced to shoulder responsibilities alone. The shutdown created a two-tiered response. The state was functioning. The federal government was not. Confusion and exhaustion mounted as local teams fought the flames. California battled the fires with one hand tied behind its back. The crisis revealed the cost of political dysfunction in the face of natural disaster. As wildfires raged and the shutdown dragged on, another battle erupted, this time in the courts. The Trump administration tried to tie disaster relief and public safety grants to the abandonment of diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) policies. Local leaders refused, sparking a major legal fight. On November 25, Federal judges in California and Illinois blocked the administration from enforcing anti-DEI conditions on FEMA grants. The courts ruled the move unconstitutional, a significant victory for local governments. Judge William Orrick condemned the administration's overreach, warning of immense harm if funds were withheld. The ruling affirmed that disaster aid couldn't be weaponized for political gain. Meanwhile, Governor Newsom sued over cuts to homeless housing funds, highlighting a pattern of using federal money as leverage. Disaster aid and public safety grants became tools in a political war, forcing local leaders to fight for resources in court. Cooperation gave way to litigation, deepening the crisis. The convergence of crises provoked a defiant response from leaders on the front lines. In D.C., Mayor Bowser became the face of resistance, opposing congressional efforts to strip the city's autonomy and renewing calls for statehood. Her stance rallied a city tired of being a political pawn. In California, Governor Newsom contrasted the state's proactive wildfire response with federal inaction, positioning California as a leader of resistance. His lawsuits and public criticism underscored the state's determination to protect its residents. Even some Republicans grew uneasy with the administration's hardline tactics, fearing political backlash. The constant conflict exhausted the nation, with allies questioning the cost of chaos. Ordinary people suffered, furloughed workers faced hardship, wildfire victims waited for aid, and D.C. residents protested for their rights. These were not just political battles. They were real, human consequences of a government at war with itself. The voices of defiance echoed the public's deep anxiety and sense of abandonment. The events of late 2025 left lasting scars on the nation. The image of a president leaving Washington in crisis became a symbol of fractured government. The shutdown and political games with disaster aid directly compromised public safety. California's struggle without federal help was a warning of how quickly systems can break down. Trust between federal, state, and local governments eroded, replaced by litigation and condemnation. The crisis raised questions about the future of disaster response in a polarized era. If federal aid can be withheld for political reasons, what happens in the next disaster? The nation was left more divided, government less trusted, and citizens wondering if help would come when needed. The storm of 2025 passed, but its wreckage in civic life remains.